Welcome to a very special episode of the Comic Book Strategic Investment Podcast. I'm your CBSI Weekend Update correspondent, Nico. This is a Tales from the Flipside production, and we are honored to be with our friend, Mr. Long Short. Will you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Hey, Nico, thank you. I am thrilled to be on the show. I'm Mr. Long Short. I write a blog for GoCollect. I've been collecting comics for as long as I can remember, and I felt that maybe there was something I could give back to the community a little bit. I've actually sort of stayed away from the social media stuff until maybe the last year and a half, but now I find myself fully immersed in it. So, really excited to be on the show, Nico. Thanks again for having me.
It's our pleasure, and you are quite modest. So, for those who are unaware, your star rose quite quickly in the last 3 months or so with an enormous sale on eBay of Marvel Previews number 95. Your copy sold. It was the first to market for, a little more than $2,000, right?
Yeah, $2,100 is what it went for, yep.
And there was an incredible emotional response from collectors. Some who scurried to their local comic shops and every comic shop in the vicinity to hunt for this issue, dug through their own boxes, hoping that they saved this preview mag. Others who derided the sale as if it was some sort of anomaly. It was followed up, as you can see from the screen, by a couple other sales that were even higher in price tag, and all of that was before Miles Mania took hold of the country. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how you conceived of this idea and knew that this was a valuable book and had the foresight to bring it to market?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I wrote one of my earliest articles for GoCollect was about Miles' books you needed to be hunting, right? This was 5 months ago before all of this blew up. And it's funny, there were a number of books on there. All of them have reached the stratosphere. And that was the very last one that I'd written about. And even at that point, the pushback was like, I don't see why anybody would want this. Reggie, I think it may have been the first time he took over the narration for their, the GoCollect does a video now. Reggie does it. He even said, I don't see that, the demand in this. But, it's a funny thing. The comic industry evolves, right? And there are a lot of people in it who don't want to evolve along with it. But if you think about things like late printings, right? When I got involved in this in the 90s, nobody wanted a late printing. I mean, there were throwaways, right? And now all
Absolutely.
of a sudden they're some of the most sought after books. First appearances are so well marketed and distributed that they're almost worthless in many cases, in that, they're anticipated, they're over ordered. So my thinking is that, okay, this is a catalog. It's oversized. It's made of crappy paper. I've been under the belief that Miles was going to be the biggest thing, in the industry for a very long time. So I went out and bought one. I think for I bought that for like $25 on eBay. I think a year and a half ago. I had no idea what the grade was. Really came back, looked pretty good. I decided to throw it in. It was the last book I included in a bunch of books I sent to CGC. It came back a 9.8. Was not expecting that. And then I sat on it for a while, and then one day I decided, I'll put, this is worth about $2,000 to me, but I'll put it up on eBay, see what I get. And a couple days later, go back and forth with this guy, Craig Mitchell, really great guy, and settled on $2,100. So that was really it. I was shocked about the response. I mean, there were videos posted that this is market manipulation. Some guy, we made up the sale so we could sell a bunch of raw ones for $500 a piece. I mean, there's all sorts of nonsense. But at the end of the day, when I got that book back, I clicked on the CGC link and it was 2. There were 2 graded. I was like, okay, this is pretty scarce, right? So there's not many of them out there right now, which is not to say there's not going to be more. People are going to send them in and get graded. But at that time, there weren't many out there. And I just decided that I'd put it up, and that's what it came back. So,
these sorts of early appearances of beloved characters, I mean, Spawn's the one that comes easiest to mind, but, there's older characters like the Crow. I mean, it's not a new thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Caliber Presents, the early Crow appearance has always been coveted, as has its corollary, and there's the Rust Spawn appearance and other corollaries there. So
Hellboy. I mean, there's a pamphlet, right, that goes for like $8,000 from some little regional Comic-Con, right? I'm not a huge Hellboy fan.
But yeah, I mean, the list goes on, and we can get more and more esoteric with it. But the reality is that smart collectors, they hunt those books voraciously and covet them when they get their hands on them, because unlike Ultimate Fallout 4 direct market, they're really, really hard to find.
Yeah, and I think
and certainly really hard to find in 98 condition. Holy cow!
Yeah, I mean, that was really dumb luck, right? It was not like it's not one of these situations where you're hunting, these things and you eventually come across one. It was the only one I ever bought, and just happened to come in at a 98. So I mean, better be lucky than smart, they say. So that's really exactly what that was.
You're very modest. Very modest, my friend. I want to talk a little bit about how you got into comics, when you started, and how you kind of evolved as a collector. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, I got started when I was a kid. My mom actually brought home a stack of them for me because I wasn't doing my reading in 3rd grade, 2nd grade, or whatever it was, and it kind of got me hooked. I was always drawn towards Marvel. When I was growing up, DC was actually really sort of the 800-pound gorilla with the Batman movies. But I was always drawn toward Marvel. My favorite cartoon was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. So I collected right through the 90s boom, like most people, and went to college. When you go to college, it's, budget and just sort of the ability to collect. Really might have bought a few books here or there, but really didn't collect much through college. And then after I graduated, got back into it for a while, and then I ended up getting married and having some kids. You kind of fall out of it. Well, that's going on. You just don't have the time or the resources to be able to do that. And then probably re-engaged, I don't know, 6 years ago, maybe something like that. And, just sort of, I like what's going on in the modern space. I know it gets a lot of criticism with all the variants and stuff, but it creates all of these really cool, just sort of cracks in the market where you can find, some really valuable stuff. So that's where I am today. That's the kind of stuff, that I like.
My understanding is that you were kind enough to bring some books that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got all sorts of them we can talk about. Let's take a look. All right. So, one thing that I find really interesting right now is, if you look at what's going on in the industry right now, right? So who are the characters that are really, really taking off, right? It's Miles Morales. It's really the younger generation of Marvel characters. There was a book put out right. I think it was the week the entire industry shut down, right? It was outlawed, right? This book right here, from Marvel, it was sensationally underordered by retailers, right? The numbers that I've seen on Comic-Con are something around the 27,000 mark, which is criminally low, right? I would say if this book came out, in August or September, you'd be pushing 100,000, just given the heat that is on all these characters, but completely forgotten about. Right before all the shops shut down, shops open up, and nobody's paying any attention to them. So there's a couple of really cool ones. This one that I just showed, this is a wraparound variant. This was really late to final order cutoff. Most people didn't order this, but this one is exceptionally cool.
And it's got them all.
What's that?
I mean, it's got all the characters, right?
It's got, and on the back, there's more as well. But Marvel's signaling something with this, right? And one character that I really like a lot is Gwenpool. That's right in front and center, right? They're telling you something there. But this one, right? This is the big one, right? So love this book here, right? This is so I can get to the front. This is a 1 in 50, right? So 2% of what was ordered on a 27,000 print run. That's pretty scarce. And the attitude that Miles, Kamala, Riri are showing here is fantastic, right? And you got a Riri blowing a bubble there. Something about people blowing bubbles on covers that send them through the roof. This book, I think it could hit the roof. And right now they're just sort of floating out there, and they're not super cheap, but where it could end up going, I think is.
I think there's copies available almost at ratio.
Yeah, below probably. You can probably find them for.
I don't know about all that.
Yeah, well, maybe 45, 35, depending, but right there, and I don't think anybody's talking about it. But and then the other one that I like.
Can you talk a little bit about the plot of that book though, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So basically, what happens in that is that the champions, right, which is the young superhero team, get into a battle, and effectively, Kamala Khan gets injured, right? So. The government comes together and says basically, teenage superheroes, right, don't have the mental capacity to be able to operate. So we're going to ban them, right? They're not allowed to be superheroes, right? So they end up operating underground, and it gets picked up, and the story hasn't really progressed since this first issue. I think just in Miles' most recent book that it picked up a little bit, but we'll ultimately see where it goes. It's supposed to culminate in a Champions #1. So many books have been canceled. We'll see if that happens. My guess is they'll probably follow through on it, just given the heat that's behind these characters. But it's effectively, they're saying that if you're a teenage superhero, you're not allowed to do your thing. That's really the crux of the story. It hasn't really progressed much beyond that at this point, but it's in Miss Marvel. It's in Miles, and it'll be in a few other books as well. But completely forgotten about for the most part. And like I said, I really do believe if this was going on right now, people would be ordering these things by the bucket load. I like this is the Walmart variant, right? I mean, this cover wasn't on shelves anywhere, but I like this one. What I will say is just look at the 3 characters they put there, right? So Kamala, Miles, and then Sam, right? I've been saying this for a while, but Marvel's sending a message, right? So you've got that one, right? And then this 1 in 100, right, which is a great one, right? The same 3, right?
Yeah, Alex Ross, watch out.
Which is also a super cool book. But what's interesting is people are on to Miles, people are on to Kamala. Sam Alexander, it's probably a big opportunity there, right? They're telling you that this kid's important to what we're doing. So nobody's really talking about him. So if there was something to look into, maybe investing behind, I would think Sam Alexander Nova would be a really smart play. And there's a handful of really cool books that you can that you can invest in there that I think are not on anybody's radar right now, right? As soon as people wake up to it, watch out, right? You know, the race is on and they're going to start evaporating. But
nice.
so that's one that I really like right now.
All right. If I can interrupt you for a second, because I want to ask you about something else that I think is really important. In addition to predicting the Miles Morales mania, which, you know, I think obviously wasn't simply just a cultural artifact or like a result of Black Lives Matter and what was going on in the country, but it was a character who was finally getting his due, right? You were also on top of the hip hop variants. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no. So, you know, I post, you know, there's this one post about, you know, 7 variants to keep an eye on. And the cover was that Miles hip hop variant. And, you know, I'd seen this book for years, and why isn't this book hotter? I mean, this is really, you know, really, you know, amazing. And so I posted that, right? And, you know, they were going for, and look at the date, they were going for 25 bucks, 25 bucks at the time. And, you know, next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I mean, their raw's going for 500, right? Which is crazy, which is absolutely crazy. But, you know, they hated books. I stand, and so I started buying them up by a cover price by the boatload. You know, somebody came out and said, nobody's buying these. And so then you know,
looks like we're having some technical difficulties.
And I think what the industry always needs for a book or an idea to proof, right? Was that there's value in these things, and then people just go with it from there. So, and then the Miles book, that was really, you know, that was more coincidence, frankly. I mean, you know, awesome cover, but like that piece came out right on the back end of, you know, Miles Mania, and then people jumped all over that one, and then, you know, the hip hop's right behind it, and then, you know, the rest is history. But yeah, I mean, that's just one little niche in the market that nobody was paying attention to, that I thought, you know, there's some really overlooked stuff here. So,
yep. Ben, they think we're in cahoots because we both have the worst internet in the team. With that, like, we in fact have 2 tin cans and a string.
I just upgraded to like
kind of
fastest
glitching up a little bit.
Is mine real? You know what? I'm gonna.
Well,
yeah,
we should
if you log out of other devices, you know, like your cell phone, for example,
or even
we're gonna bring in.
I've got, you know, I just got like the fastest FiOS that you could get, but sometimes I think it comes in and out up here.
Are you hardwired in, or are you on Wi-Fi?
I'm on Wi-Fi. I don't have. I can't get. I'm on. This is on the second floor. I can't get.
Okay. All right. We'll just deal with it and continue on. Here we go.
You know, I'm gonna just try this. Hold.
Yeah, because you're doing good now.
Yeah, you're doing really good now. Well, we just spoke too soon, I think. He was going to try something. Yeah. Big shout out to everybody in the chat tonight. We appreciate it. And we're going to have a little, hopefully, if this continues well, we're going to have a little type of shoot the shit after the show type thing. So hopefully you guys will stay around, and we'll get a couple extra people on here to do a little conversing. So I think everything's good. I'm going to let you guys continue.
All right. Is that any better?
Perfect. Yeah, they think that this is, like I said, a tactical ploy by me to try to get, you know, like an iMac or whatever out of CBSI, but that is not, in fact, what I'm trying to do here. But I'd be okay if they sent me one. So anyway, back to business. All right. So you're
right.
dead on with the hip hop variants, dead on with Miles Morales. Can you kind of give us an idea about sort of the criteria that you're employing to sort of pick these books? I mean, is it a matter of trying to predict trends? I mean, one, for example, we talked about privately when I booked the show was you're like, people are sleeping on Kate Bishop, and within 2 weeks, Hawkeye 9 second print, I think it tripled in price. You really have an uncanny ability to kind of foresee what's going on in the market. Can you give us some kind of window into what you're thinking?
Yeah, it's really kind of simple at the end of the day, right? It's really it's longer term enduring trends. So much of the spec that I see people going crazy on are like sort of in the moment things that aren't going to matter to anybody, right? So what's a current one? Immortal She-Hulk, right? Like, I don't know once that story's done if anybody's going to give a shit about Immortal She-Hulk, right? But
so one issue,
even if it's a series, right? I mean, when it's all wrapped up, like, does anybody really care about Immortal Hulk now? Not really, right? It's a really cool series, but like, I don't know if anybody really cares about it. Which is not knocking, because I love it. Like, I read it, but I'm not sure that in 10 years, right, people are going to be scrambling for that. Maybe, but I don't necessarily see it. So, if you look, there's a post there where, I talk about 10 books for the next 10 years. It's really, in my opinion, those characters are going to have a significance to people, right? This whole idea about movies, right? Chasing characters in movies, right? Like when Hydra Man got popular from Spider-Man, like, is anybody going to care about that? And the answer is no. The point of like a movie
I
is
already forgot that he was a thing.
Yeah, but like, people went nuts for a while.
They absolutely did, right? Yeah, but I mean, it had, literally, I forgot that was a character.
Yeah,
and you mentioned it was just gone.
Yeah, it's 100%. But people went nuts because they're here. He's going to be in a movie, but it's going to be in a movie. So what, right? So Kate Bishop, right? I mean, so Kate Bishop, if you've read the Hawkeye stuff, I mean, the coolest character.
Run.
Yeah, that's like maybe one of the best runs ever, right? That's just brilliant. But you know what? Marvel's behind it. She's getting a TV show, right? A show, right? And the character is going to continue to be an important part of the MCU going forward. That's the kind of transition that's going to sort of cement her sort of in the hearts and minds of people for years and years to come. So that's a character to get behind. And there were so many really cool books with her in it that nobody was paying any attention to. So, that's why I post that. On the books that I had, sort of the 10 comics for the next 10 years, there was Ultimate Fallout 4. I mean, you could get them for next to nothing then. Spider-Gwen. In retrospect, these aren't necessarily difficult calls, but Edge of Spider-Verse 2, you could pick that up for next to nothing, right? Not next to nothing, but you can find it for $100, and now forget it. They're whatever they're going for, $800. Venom 3 third print with Null on the cover, right? That was a $15 book at that point in time. But I just look for characters that I think are going to have staying power, going to be around for a long time. And there's ebbs and flows, and it's just about sort of picking them up and identifying them at the right time. And then it's also just things that books that I see that I really like. I think you and I were talking about Phil Noto, right? His covers to me are amazing, right?
Incredibly underappreciated. I was looking at his Wonder Woman covers today that are, they're every bit as good as the Shoes covers. Nobody cares, right? They sit in dollar bins.
Yeah,
and then when you look at the ratio variants he does, lights out.
Yeah, I mean, he's I was telling somebody he's like Norman Rockwell, right? For comics, some of these covers that he does, and nobody really cares necessarily, but I've been sort of picking up his stuff because it's absolutely stunning. But yeah, I really sort of take a long-term view. The spec game is exceptionally short-term. You know, all of these top 10 lists, you know, I watch them. I think they're fun. But almost everything on there is really, you know, a flash in the pan kind of stuff. So sort of just take a longer-term point of view on things that are going to mean something to people 10 years from now. Yeah,
it's hard for me because, like, I love the movies. I love the TV shows, right? You know, I loved Warrior Nun and Ariella. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was good. I can't wait to sit down and watch Old Guard. But those are obviously not long-term investment plays. They're just
Probably not. Probably not. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, those are much more speculative. It just depends on sort of what's behind them, and is it going to elevate it in the sort of in the eyes of the average person. I mean, that's really how you got to think about it, right? You know, the Miles video game may do more for his character with younger kids than any movie could ever do, right? I mean, just the way that kids have gravitated towards video games and that sort of being the center of their being, if you will, you know, that could have a much bigger impact on keeping that character front of mind for the next generation than maybe any movie. So, you know, it's just thinking about it.
And I'm not suggesting that there's. Oh, yeah, and I'm not suggesting that there's not like a flip cycle to The Boys, Umbrella Academy, Warrior Nun, Ariella, Old Guard. I haven't seen Old Guard yet, but from what I've heard, it's good enough that it'll probably get a sequel. That's not my suggestion. It is that I don't see them being burned into the pop culture iconography in the same way that those characters like Kate Bishop, for example, or Miles Morales, like you've already discussed, will be.
Yeah.
And I think you've done a real good job of kind of like honing in and identifying those characters who are going to be fixtures within pop culture for, you know, decades to come.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we'll see. I mean, nobody's perfect on these things, but that's the general idea. And you know, it's funny. I just wrote a piece on Black Widow, which, you know, had nothing to do with the Marvel news. You know, you submit these things well before you know, they ever come out. But and I've got Inhumans #5. I've got both Black Widows, but you know, I just happened to see Fighting with My Family with Florence Pugh. Is that her name, Florence Pugh? Whoever's going to play. Yeah. And I was like, wow, she's really good, right? She's going to be a big hit. And so sparked, you know, I'll write about this book. And that happened to sort of be released shortly after the news broke that she was going to sort of take over the mantle. But that wasn't in reaction to that. It was just more thinking about, okay, you know, who are some characters that people aren't thinking about right now that could matter going forward. So, and that's a tough one. I don't really know if she's going to stick the way Scarlett did. Probably not, but pretty good actress, pretty good casting, and I think there's a chance that you know she garners a following. So you know, we'll see. We'll see how ultimately how that plays itself out. Yeah, you know, I like just to look for sort of where people aren't paying attention, and you know, where are there potentially big opportunities, you know, sort of multi-bagger opportunities, not sort of $10 here, $10 there, but like where can you really get you know, good return on your investment over a long period of time. And you should really think about holding these things for a long period of time. I mean, if you want to be flipping week in and week out, that can be fun, just a lot of work, right? Go to the post a lot, boxing things up a lot. There's you know, that's just a lot to do, and that's not really how I think about it. It's sort of longer term plays here.
Yeah, can we talk about DC speculation and investment, because it is you know, perhaps to me the most complicated you know, kind of conundrum these days. It appears that Batman is going to have his own HBO, Time Warner film TV universe that'll be comparable to Marvel. At least that's what I think DC is signaling with the Gotham Central announcement. It seems to be that like that's what they're setting up. We've heard a ton of announcements. I mean, you know, every 2 weeks it's Justice League Dark. Here comes Constantine. Don't forget about Zatanna. We're going to do Rose and Thorn and Green Lantern and 6 different iterations. And, you know, for a long time, people have been like, DC, we can spec on it. It's all undervalued, blah, blah, blah. And that doesn't come to fruition. Do you have any sort of position about whether or not this is finally DC's time to shine? Because I think there's probably a real opportunity for Batman, although I haven't kind of had the time to hone in and study on the particular books or give a lot of thought to that. But I just sort of wonder what your take on all that stuff is.
Yeah, DC spec is really hard for me, to be perfectly honest, and there's a couple of reasons why. Maybe that most of their keys are all Silver Age or older. Maybe it's because they've had so much content between TV and different movies, none of it really moves the needle. It's not. I'm not sure. It feels like there should be a massive opportunity there. It's just been really hard. I do think, and this is not news to anybody, I do think, Punchline's a pretty cool character. It's fun. This industry really can be funny. Like the negativity from sort of the grizzled veterans around that character when she broke was just awful. Like people were just angry about it, right? They couldn't get Hell Arisen 3. And
it made it appealing to me.
No, I know. And
right? I was like, oh, well, okay.
And I'll tell you what, it's the first thing that's got me reading DC again. Like, I really like the character. I'm not the biggest Harley fan. Like, she doesn't do anything for me, but like the fact that she's like the anti-Harley, there's something appealing to me about that. So I really like the character. And, that spec has nothing to do with movies at all, right? That is straight out of the comics. And I think, I think that's a great thing. The one book that, nobody's paying attention to, and I wrote about it, is that Hell Arisen 3, the B cover, right? I don't know how many there are, but I speculate there's probably 7,000 or so of those, because as I looked at it, the B covers were generally ordered about 20% of the total book, and that book had ordered by retailers somewhere in the neighborhood of 38,000, something like that. There's 5 submitted to CGC last time I checked. Like nobody's that could be her rarest book. It's the purple cover, and the fact that she doesn't appear in either one of the covers, I think there's a big opportunity there. Yeah, that's the one right there. I think there's a big opportunity in that book, and you can usually pick it up a little bit less than the cover A. But when the whole Punchline thing works itself out, and I think she'll be around for a long time, people could end up chasing that book just because there's far fewer of them. And the whole supply demand thing is an important thing to consider, right? When you're collecting these things, and I like to talk about it. I think supply demand is largely misunderstood. I posted a poll on Twitter the other day, and I asked people, would you prefer a Ultimate Comics Spider-Man #1 9.2 in the newsstand, or a 9.8 in the direct edition, right? The direct edition is far more of them. The newsstand at that point in time, relatively scarce. And 60% of the people came back and said they'd prefer the 9.8 in the direct edition, and 40% said they prefer the 9.2 in the newsstand. For me, I would take the newsstand all day long. But people said, well, look, there's more demand for the 9.8. I was like, well, if you look at demand versus supply, right? Yeah, there's a lot. There is more demand, but there's a lot more of those 9.8s than the fewer people are actually would be seeking out a 9.2 in the newsstand. So it's just understanding. It's not necessarily what the masses are chasing, but it's what people are chasing relative to the end supply of a particular book that makes it interesting.
Proportionality.
Yeah, 100%. Much better way to put it.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. There's a lot of ideas that are just kind of like basic business, basic economics, like the idea of like rarity and scarcity and supply and demand that I don't think, unfortunately, a lot of people that love comic books understand, and it handicaps their ability to kind of spend their money wisely. I mean, I'm not a business guy by trade, but those are ideas that like you just gotta like, for example, economic psychology is something that I've started to really read about so that I can understand more about the comic market.
Yeah, no, I mean, it became clear to me that,
for example,
I think you broke up there a little bit, Nico.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay. Will you continue?
Yeah, no. I lost my train of thought there. It'll come back to me.
So
But
we're talking about economic. We're talking about economic psychology, right? So loss aversion is something that is really interesting to me in comics. One, because when a book goes up, that sticker never changes. Not just on like a collector's subconscious, but in a retail shop, right? Like they never bring the prices back down.
Yeah, no,
so it's always the listed price in your brick and mortar.
Yeah, no, there is a stickiness to the upside a little bit. What became clear to me, if you want to sell comics is that, what's your competition? And if you look at sort of Modern's sort of 90s books, right, and you want to sell something, you put it up on eBay, you're one of 600 of a book, right? So how are they going to pick yours? Either you're going to price it more aggressively, or there's got to be a surge in demand, right, for that book to wake everybody up to it, right, and hope that you get out at the right time. If you trade in books that are a little bit more scarce, and the Moderns are wonderful for that, right, with the high ratio variance. And I know all this stuff got really, there's a lot of negativity that built around it for a long time, but anytime there's negativity around something, it actually creates an opportunity. But these high ratio variants, the late printings, I like the Walmart variants because nobody can really get them. Anything that sort of limits the supply, you have a much better chance of being able to move it because there's far less to compete with. And I think some of these books are wildly undervalued given sort of their availability. But you could see some of these things going for materially higher, but for whatever reason they don't. But that's really where I like to focus. If you look at the stuff that I write about generally, it's one of two things. It's things that are somewhat scarce or somewhat limited, or things that are going to have huge demand drivers over over a long period of time. Those are the areas that I like to focus.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about your personal collecting habits? Do you keep like a personal collection of stuff that's just for you? Not going to sell?
Yeah, absolutely. The stuff in my PC is stuff that maybe people wouldn't care as much about. So one of my favorite books in my collection is Captain America 6. So the first appearance of the Winter Soldier.
There we go.
So it's the regular cover, the cover A, but it's a newsstand edition, right? So I found it in the wild, came back in 9.6. I was not expecting that, and for me, that's really cool, right? I mean, that's a book for me that like is near and dear. I don't think most people don't care about 9.6s. I'm not
the newsstand from late Marvel newsstand. If they don't now, they're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not as hung up on grade and moderns. I mean, I'm trying to figure out why 9.8s go for such a premium, right? They're almost always the most common. So I know people want highest grade available, but they trade 2x the 9.6s, right? A 9.6 is virtually a perfect book, right? It may just be the grader's temperament on that particular day. It's virtually perfect in every way, shape, or form. Yet the 9.8s sell for twice as much, and there's more of them. So the value in the market to me is the 9.6s. And, nobody, I don't know if people feel inferior about having a 9.6 in their collection. Like that shit doesn't bother me. If it's a cool book, it's relatively scarce, 9.4, 9.6. I mean, I think Overstreet, their highest grades are 9.2s, right? So we've become so hung up on grade, and to each their own, but I'm really, really happy owning 9.6s. I can buy them for half the price. If I can buy 2 9.6s, right, for 1.98, and I'm looking to move the book, it's going up. I can sell one right? Then I have another one I can sell if it gaps up a little bit higher. So, you know, that's one of the things that I like to do. So I like modern newsstands. I mentioned before I have that Ultimate Comics Spider-Man #1 9.2 in newsstand that I like a lot. You know, one of my favorite books. Hold on. It was the topic of my very first post for GoCollect, and just a little history. I absolutely love Yi Hung Lee's Spider-Woman 1/100 variant. Love that cover. I hunted for it for years. I ended up getting one far cheaper than I ever imagined.
Nice.
But that was dumb luck. It was in an auction that nobody seemed to be paying attention to. But when I was researching that, I came across this book, right? And
oh, I know about that one. Yeah.
This book is just absolutely stunning, right? And same artist. And so I wrote a piece, and this is a 1 in 50. And I was like, it was titled something to the effect, does Ghost Spider #101 1/100 have a worthy contender? And I put that book up against it. And I don't know, for me, like that's an absolutely just breathtaking cover, like one of my all-time favorites. So I have that. You know, I found one of those. I have one of those in 9.8 in my collection, but it's one that the first one that I found in the wild, sent it in, you know, fortunately came back at 9.8. So I'm really happy to own something like that.
Yeah, for those who are unaware, that's Thor number
705, the death of Jane Foster. You know, the cover that got all the heat on that, believe it or not, was the Art Germ cover, was the one that really everybody was chasing. I think it was a Virgin variant, maybe, that everybody went after.
right.
I was actually
1 in 100.
What's that?
Yeah, it was the 1 in 100, right?
Yeah,
the Art Germ.
Yeah, and everybody was chasing.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful
and that
cover.
1 in 50 is gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my favorites. I mean, so everybody knows I like late printings, right? So yeah, that was the one that everybody wanted, and it's gorgeous in its own right? It absolutely is. But this one seemed to go under the radar. So, you know, I just like quirky things. Like, I don't know how many of these are, but I don't think there's a ton of them. These purple covers from Matt Fraction's Hawkeye run, I just love them. Absolutely love them. You know, the #2, that's where Kate Bishop first shows up. You know, this is the kind of stuff that gets me super excited. You know, every other, I think there was like 5 or 6 printings of these. Every other one was in white. These purple ones just absolutely pop. You know, I picked these up.
And I can't decide if the newsstands are going to be more preferential than the later printings. You know, it's hard for me to kind of gauge what the market's going to do, but it's going to be fun to watch those chase one another.
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily compete with one another. I mean, newsstands are over, right? I think Marvel was done in 2011, and DC was done in maybe 2013, something like that. Yeah,
yeah. I think that's
so right. The newsstands, you know, aren't much part of the conversation anymore. The late printings, people are waking up to those as well, right? The problem with the late printings is they can always add another late printing, right? So everybody runs out and chases the second printing. Well, they can come up with a third and a fourth and a fifth. So which one do you ultimately go for? More likely than not, it's the one with the coolest cover. But I mean, one of my favorite late print. Actually, let's talk about a newsstand that I found the other day, because it's a little bit. So I grabbed this book the other day, Ultimate Comics Spider-Man 12. In newsstand. I mean, this must have been maybe the last newsstand Marvel ever did. I mean, it very well could have been. I don't know, because, you know, Ultimate Comics Spider-Man started in 2011. So, but if you look up there, you can see it says newsstand. So, you know, this book, a couple things going for it. One, the death of the Prowler, which is obviously very influential in Marvel's and in Miles' origin. But the reason I got it wasn't for that. It's the first appearance of Ultimate Kate Bishop, and Ultimate Kate Bishop and Miles actually have a romantic relationship. And I don't know, maybe there's something going on there. Who knows? I just thought it was pretty cool. But then I happened to stumble across this newsstand, and, you know, bonus. So we'll see. I'm not sure anybody will ever care about it, but I think it's pretty cool.
That's strong. That's good stuff. Do you you were going to tell us about another later printing that you had back there too?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know. Alex Malev is my favorite artist. So this Moon Knight is near and dear to my heart. I just think it's absolutely badass. Just a really cool book.
And that's Moon Knight number.
This Moon Knight number 1, and this was Bendis's run. It wasn't necessarily the greatest run in Moon Knight ever, but
it's the greatest. Yeah, it might be the greatest cover ever, right?
Oh man, I mean, he's got some bad. I just wrote about. The hell did I do with that? I don't know. I don't have it. My latest post, there's a Ryan Stegman Moon Knight cover that could be my favorite. If somebody wants to sort of pull up the one that just came out today, there's this Moon Knight cover. It's a 1 in 25, I think. Just completely amazing. I don't know what I did with it. Yeah, I don't think I pulled it out tonight to talk about. But
yeah, so not to completely change the subject, but it's a subject I think is important, and I kind of want to talk about it because in the live chat, our friend Gary is adamant about this idea that a later printing of a first appearance should never be worth more than, I don't know how he phrased it, the first printing.
Yeah,
so, but now here's the issue, right? I don't know about all that because, like, in principle, classic collectors like you and I and Gary have been around for a long time. Like, that's ingrained in us, and like, we're like, oh yeah, well, of course. And then insert whatever book there, and we promptly break those rules, right? We'll promptly break them for a cool cover, a neat little variation on a later printing, and be like, oh no, that's absolutely the winner book. I did it just recently with Thor 662, 622. So I don't even know. The Tom Hiddleston photo variants, the first Eichel. They're going to have the Lady Thor in the TV show. I don't know if it'll be the Loki Asgard Assassins 2 version or this version or what precisely. But yeah, that book right there. Love it. Right? I'm all about it. And yeah, and I mean, it's just because it's 100% different, right?
Yeah. Listen, I totally get what Gary's saying.
We all do, right? We all do.
But what does it come down to at the end of the day, right? So I was just Gary and I were having this conversation, and you know what? So let's talk about this book, okay? This is the first appearance. The first, we can argue all day long, but this is really the first appearance of Kamala Khan. I know you could see her shirt in Captain Marvel 17, and then there was a face shot in Captain Marvel 14, but those really are by definition cameo appearances, right?
First full appearance, no question about it, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yeah,
right. So I've got a bunch of these, right? I've got a pile of these red ones, right? I can't find this one, right? You hunt and hunt and hunt. They're going for more. So you tell me, why should if these are harder to find, naturally they're gonna go up more. So I get from a philosophical standpoint what Gary's saying. A second printing really isn't the first appearance because it came later. But at the end of the day, right? I mean, some of these are so short printed, and Comicron doesn't even have a number for that book because they cut it off at a certain threshold. Which is not to say there wasn't later printings, but it's not based on what I can find out there, it's not a widely printed book. It could be in the low thousands. People are not paying more for it because they can't get it, right? I mean, it's a scarcity issue.
Well, and it's a color creation too, right?
Yeah, there's nothing actually sexy about that one, right? I mean,
book, okay? For example, the graphic novel is the first appearance of the New Mutants. And you've got to open it up to see that it's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 10th, 9th printing. Just because the 9th printing is super duper scarce, nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
That's for sure, right? So it's a variation. And there's been this kind of like evolution from, I don't know, maybe 2009, 10, where there was the second printing of that Walking Dead book with the governor on it. Remember the blue book? And about the same time, that was the Detective 871, the first Scott Snyder, the red variant there. And the color variation was like, oh, well, that's cool. That's different, right? And that bled over to the Hawkeye Fraction run. They started doing it there. That's why, you know, I was buying those Kate Bishop books back in the day. Liked them then. Then, in the last 5 years or so, there's been a move to have completely different covers, right? Or to suck out interior art and put them on the, you know, like some sort of whatever, you know, panel blown up or a splash page or whatever. And that was kind of frowned on after a little bit, right? And now they want completely new art. And that kind of evolution, I don't know where that's all going to shake out in the future. But I think those are important considerations for me as I pick winners and losers in the second print market. And I am kind of partial to those different colors just because when I started getting into second prints, that was 871, that was the Hawkeye book, that was
this book in purple is so much, I don't know why, it's so much better than the one in red, right? And maybe because purple's her color, I don't know. She wears those purple sunglasses, but meaningfully better. All it is a color change, right? But for me, it's just so much better. And I got to be honest, I love, like, this is one of my favorite modern covers by a comfortable margin. Like, this cover just kicks ass. It's so subtle.
Yeah, did it. And I think, and Gary points out another good example, right? Which is the counterfactual to the rule that he sets down, right? Because that's kind of like the reality of it. The Star book. That cover is a prime example of that.
But you know, there's a lot of books you can point to, like, you know, Venom 3 third print, right? Why does that book move, you know, more than
interior art, in fact, right? That's usually frowned upon, but not here. Right, it's great interior art.
Yeah, and he's on the cover, and I think in the slab culture, or slabbing books a lot more, right? Displaying them, putting them out, right? That means a lot more. I mean, that was my whole point from. Hold on. Let's do a real example here, right? If you had to have so Yelena Belova, right? And these aren't late printings, but this supports the point, right? If you're in a late printing, if there's a first appearance, you're going to put that character on the cover. It's going to go for more, right? So we have this book, right? Inhumans, right? This is her first appearance. It's very much a tease. She's in it for a few pages, kind of in the shadows. She's called Black Widow, but she's not named. And then you have this book, which is really her first full appearance. If you're speccing on Yelena and you want to display one of these, which one would you buy? Right? I think it's the Black Widow book all day long because, I mean, she's there front and center. It's a variant. I think it's a little more scarce than the cover A, just because it's harder to find. And, you know, what I've been able to see from books that have been slabbed, there's fewer of them. But it comes down to at the end of the day, when characters are on the cover of the book, as dumb as that sounds, that's what's ultimately going to move it. That's why Hulk 181 is in a different league than Hulk 180. If Wolverine was on the cover of Hulk 180, that would be the book.
Yeah, and that's why Hawkman 4 isn't an astronomical.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
I mean, I can't even imagine. It'd be
off the charts. I mean,
5 times, you think, what it goes for now? Probably 4. Hard to tell. I don't know, but it'd be a lot if there was.
It seems silly, but if you're going to slab a book, you can't get into the middle of it. Well, what it's showing you. So that's why I hear what Gary is saying, and I think it's a very good argument. It's just that some of these late printings with the cover changes that they've made. Just make them more desirable, right? And at the end of the day, you get high desirability, and a shorter print run. The prices are gonna rise. I mean, it's just that simple.
Rational actors in the comic market, I like to think that I'm one of them. It's my biggest disadvantage. I'm sorry, I think you're one of them too. Your biggest disadvantage, right?
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, in an emotional market that's driven by story and art, and we're looking for rules. We're rules guys. Hell, we're men, right? And it's like you basically get best practices and standards and factors. You don't really get hard and fast rules for this stuff. It's kind of like, well, this is influential. This is sort of an influential thing. This is sort of an influential thing. And, I don't know how you do what you do, reading the tea leaves in such an elegant way. I really marvel at it.
I don't think it's much more than just sort of trying to gauge where long-term interest is going to come from. Like I said, the spec market, it's a lot of fun, but there's a lot of wasted energy, I think, on books, characters, and ideas that aren't going to go anywhere longer term. So I try to think about sort of longer term trends and looking at areas where people are forgotten. Like right now, listen, Deadpool's coming to the MCU. He's going to be huge. Ryan Reynolds is going to be doing that character for a long time, and everybody's sort of thrown him to the wayside. The book you should be getting right now, if you can find it, because it's not an easy one, is Deadpool #1, the newsstand edition. It came out in 1997. The newsstands of those are hard as hell to find, and the barcode is on the back. So it's not easily identifiable. People post them. They only post a picture of the front cover. But those are really, really hard to find. And I think, that's a home run book that you could probably find for $25 somewhere right now. Nobody's really thinking about it. But I think Deadpool is kind of come back screaming, and just kind of cold right now. It's not the hot thing. That's the time to really start to be picking these things up, in my opinion. We'll see.
Okay, if we take one quick brief intermission. Remember, if you go back to Flipside episode 126, that's this Monday's episode, in the comments section, and post some sort of comment about who you want to see interact with aliens and Predator. Maybe you want Kate Bishop to get eaten by a Predator or an alien. I don't really know. I don't really care. The point is, the 5 of us or 10 of us or however many people are going to vote, and somebody's going to win a free copy of this book. I'll send it to you. I don't know. It'll be fun, and we appreciate the support. I'm basically trying to bribe you into helping our analytics by influencing the YouTube algorithm. So this is my attempt to bribe our viewers with free comic books. You can sell it on eBay. You can rip it up on your own YouTube show and say, to hell with that Flipside channel. I don't really care. Just kindly participate. That's all. Back to Deadpool. So what about the RRP? Am I ever going to make any money if I buy one of those things? Because I desperately want the rip-off 50 covers of Blackest Night to get the bling variant. I don't care which one it is, right? Like, it can either be the Siege variant or the Wolverine variant. I don't have either. Every time I think about buying one, I'm like, don't do that. You're a moron. You could spend that money on something that would be a better investment. This is just throwing thousands of dollars away so that you can hang something cool on your wall somewhere. And I must tell you, it is my greatest regret that I don't have a 9.8 of either of those books.
Yeah, I mean, those are tough. Those books do not cut back to earth. I would probably, unless it's like a personal sort of trophy. I got
comic book problems. You haven't figured that out. I got serious comic book problems.
Yeah, no, I love them too. I don't have my radar. I mean, I snagged this one not too long ago. I'm never gonna have a copy of Marvel Comics #1, but like this homage.
That's awesome.
I snagged this one for, I don't know, $30. I don't know. And not a 9.8. I got it slabbed. Like I said, I don't buy 9.8s. Like I think I bought one 9.8 slab in my life, and it was a super discount. But I picked that up raw for, I don't know, I think it was like 30, 35, I forget, something in that range. But nobody really cares right now. But that's one of Deadpool's sort of more scarce variants. But the ones that you referred to, that's a whole nother league. That's like that Delato Spider-Man variant that goes for $8,000 or something. And those are tough investments because I'm just not sure you're ever going to buy them at a great price, or you're going to be able to turn around and sell them for something meaningfully above that. Maybe not, but they're already sort of sky high. So
there's just so many cool Deadpool books. Like, for example, I like every one of the Mark with the Mouth books. I mean, they're all movie homages. The second prints are tremendous. You got the sketch cover of those two. I don't have them. I shouldn't be running my mouth about them. This is how I lose books, right? Like, I'm like, there I go, running off at the jib before I go and buy a couple for myself. You did it again. I like the Playboy bunny variant. I like
that was the book that got me into Deadpool. Beyond, I've got it here somewhere. I don't have one slabbed, but that book is brilliant. That whole run.
So my friend is worried, though. He doesn't have your confidence. He thinks it's over, right? Now, don't worry. He's probably listening now. He always thinks the sky is falling. He keeps me, being a conservative, disciplined buyer. He really does. But he believes there's no shot that, like, Disney can't possibly put together a film with Ryan Reynolds in it. If they would have done it, they'd have already announced it. They haven't figured out how to do it pragmatically, and they're just going to kind of like let the character die a slow death. And I'm like,
it's funny. People say Disney can't do this. Disney owned Miramax, right? Miramax did all of Tarantino's movies. Like this notion that Disney can't do this stuff is nonsense. Like I don't even know where it comes from, to be perfectly honest with you, right? If you look at the studios that Disney's owned, they've put out some, shit that will make your blow your hair off, right? I'm a perfect example, but
wait, Brian, Gary, hey,
oh hey,
Gary.
Sorry.
Oh,
hey, how's it going, guys?
Oh my goodness,
what's up, buddy?
Now comes the fun part of the show. How you doing, Gary?
This is great. I've been packing. I'm going away tomorrow morning, but I've been listening to what I'm hearing. I like to stir up the pot, play devil's advocate a little bit on there, and but there are exceptions to everything, right? Just when we think we learn the rules of the game, things change. What used to be dollar box fodder is now in the hands of Cates and Ewing and Aaron blowing up. So I used to bring my comics into school all the time and give the boxes to the kids. And now I'm like, all right, give them back, because I'm like,
that's actually, Gary, that's the same thing with like the investing business, like in stocks, right? Things that used to work stop working, right? The game is constantly changing. You've got to be on your toes. So it's spot on, right? Everything gets arbed away, if you will, right? There's a fat pitch and, everybody gravitates towards it, and then it's no longer there, but it opens up something else. And what that something else is, we'll have to wait and see. But that what makes it fun, right? Staying on your toes. But anybody who gets stubborn about this hobby and saying, "Oh, that's not worth anything because it's, that's a catalog, right? Nobody's going to want that." I don't think you're doing yourself much of a service if you're going to sort of be dogmatic about anything in this hobby. You just sort of stay on your toes and see what's working.
Yeah, and Topher would be out of a job if
all right, guys,
prescribe to that.
What did
Yeah,
Nico say?
quickly,
Yeah,
guys,
Nico,
I'm going to let
yeah.
you talk amongst yourselves.
Nico, it's been just
I'm gonna jump off. It's too much bandwidth for me in West Virginia. But I would like to share one thing before I go, and before I thank Mr. Longshort, our esteemed guest, for tolerating me for an hour before he gets to spend quality time with my friends who are much more enjoyable. And that is this. We were talking before the show, and we theorized, Gary, that in your role as a principal, that you bring children in, and when they need to be disciplined, that you have some regimen of comic books that you provide them to read so that they can get some moral lesson. You don't have to comment on that. We know that that's what you do. Mr. Longshort, you, sir, are a genius. I will leave you in the capable hands of one, Bryan McClay, and two, Gary Nusser. Thank you both for taking good care of my friend.
It was a blast. Thanks for having me on. I loved it. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
All right. I'm trying to pull one more esteemed colleague in on the show, and we'll see if we can get him on. But as for now, let's get into some maybe some future modern spec if you guys want, or we can just talk about anything. I would love to get into both your guys' heads, and I'm sure a lot of people out in the community wants to do the same. So, where should we start? Do you guys have any ideas?
Well, I was just listening, and I think we don't know each other. We've never been on a podcast together, and I tend to play lone wolf until Nico talks me into weekly things. But we have met. We actually have met on Twitter, and we're always sort of talking about some books that are popping in both our heads at the same time. And now we started to DM them a little more. And I think one of the big things is, are the trend makers for me? Are the trend makers? Are you guys, Bryan? Are the Toms? Are the comic gyms? Are they making the rain, or is the weather being produced naturally? And that's always the biggest thing in my mind. What's the trigger that actually sets sets the ball rolling, right? And it could be like Donny Cates coming out and releasing that video with Ryan Stegman. Or is it sometimes one of those conjectures that gets thrown out into the air, and all of a sudden what is, conjecture becomes reality in a lot of people's minds? Because I think a lot of people, when you think of thousands of people watching some of these shows, they are right away, this is their authority. Like, this is they wait for some of these shows to come on, and this is where they get all their information from. They're not reading comics. They're not, they're not on the social media per se. They're listening to just one person's point of view. And I think a lot of time you're seeing then the sales rush starts up, right? You see all of a sudden all of those cheap copies disappear off eBay. And usually that happens before those announcements are made. Not to ever say that there's insider trading going on, but I think people talk to their friends, right? And say, hey, this book looks like it could be a big play. If you find some cheap copies, go out and get it. But then once it's out into the wild, all of a sudden now you see the copies disappearing and you get the panic built in, right? And I think we need to be careful with that. I think the most recent example was the Thor, the Black Winter, right? And that was something Donny Cates came out very quickly, because Donny Cates plays the game better than anybody. He creates speculation. He knows how to sort of shake that hornet's nest and get everybody excited. But he came out and said right off, this was not this character. And other people, other podcasts went out and said, well, no, I think maybe he got caught in it and tried more. And so this becomes a conspiracy that sort of drives me crazy in comic speculation. And that's why I try to avoid watching other things, because I think also you get influenced by what you're watching, and you may have an original thought that all of a sudden gets not corrupted, but gets sort of really shaped by others. So I think it's all really interesting. I think a lot goes into comic speculation, investing, looking at futures. And that's why I love sort of having those back and forth sort of conversations with someone who can sort of be in the same boat as we are, not to be on a soapbox, Bryan.
Well, let me kind of get into that a little bit, because you mentioned Donny Cates, and you mentioned some of the other. Donny Cates is a prime example of something that I'm a little worried about. Now, Donny Cates is great for the hobby. I mean, the guy is bringing excitement back into books. He's making especially readers really happy, because the books that he is part of have amazing storylines and whatnot. But one of the things that I'm really worried about is that once the publisher starts getting involved in maybe trying to tweak the spec idea, are we crossing a line that's going to turn into something bad?
I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, the publisher generally doesn't make any money on, spec. I mean, if these books go from cover to 100, right? Marvel, DC, they're not seeing any of that, right? That's all happening behind the scene. I think if they're going to create buzz around the hobby, that will serve them, right? Bringing more people in, buying these books. But I don't see what's in it for them necessarily in the secondary market, right? I mean, it's not big enough for them to be, flipping books. I struggle with it a little bit. I mean, I think anything to keep people engaged, and in the spec that's awesome is everybody's looking at movie spec, but spec that comes organically from the books themselves, that's a wonderful thing, right? So I'm definitely all for that. I just don't know what's in it for the big for the big two, big three, whoever, to play that game. I think they're just more building buzz around their properties.
Well, maybe that could be the reason, is that they want to build buzz.
I think that's exactly it. And I think the creators are on social media not because they want to, necessarily. Some of them are really great and they're really back and forth with fans, but their job is to sell books, to help sell books. And I've heard from a lot of creators that there is no one at the comic companies per se. There aren't these social media people out there doing the job that maybe they should be doing. So the creators have to sort of hoof it out there, sell their books. I talk to Jim Zub back and forth all the time on Twitter, and he's such a great idea guy. He was very involved in the Immortal Hulk. He was involved in that Champions I heard you talking about before. But those Champions books aren't selling. So he said straight out, he says, I'm not going to get another shot at Champions because the books aren't selling and my concept's not working. So now that Outlawed is the next way to get the Champions sort of up and running, a new writer sort of heading out. So I think, the social media aspect has two sort of a pro and a con to it. And I think someone like Donny Cates, and I know you guys are talking about the second print, right, on Runes of Ravencroft. So they had an A and a B cover for that, and I think the main character was on both those covers. And I think if you were reading that in digital, if you're reading that book, the very last page, the epilogue, like there were two things in that book. One, they started up a new evil cabal of all these people who have no connection to one another. And then they had that thing with Cassidy, who was introduced in here, the ancestor that you knew. It was a Frank Terry book, and this is what I always say. There are certain people who go back, like, that was a Frank Terry book. The book he's writing is a Frank Terry book. They're going to use their same characters over and over again. Sam Alexander gets used by certain writers over and over again, right? So you have to watch, are these writers on the books also? And I think that's an important part of it. You have to follow writers. And another one, Cullen Bunn loves Andy Benton from the Venom books, right? She was Mania, then she's now Scream. That book went digital. That's a character that I know that I was worried when Donny Cates got her in one of those, the Web of Venom series. That's it. She's going to buy it. But no, because Cullen Bunn, now I'm wondering what's going to happen to Wraith, right? Wraith, because Wraith is such a, Donny Cates has been talking about that guy for a year and a half. Before Guardians of the Galaxy, you knew that was going to be a big book. So you were stocking up on those Annihilation Conquest books. Yeah, they're behind me over there. I think I did a podcast on that 2 years ago talking about, I ended it with and now part 2 will be Wraith. And I never came back and did it because we've been waiting for, COVID and whatnot. But that EM Gist cover on that book, that's going to blow up. You don't think I ordered 2 of those before, the crisis? I hope they, come out. It's, some books aren't coming out. And then some books, I saw that, what was it? Strange, what's the book everyone's talking about? The Strange Academy. I saw the issue 2, the 1 to 25 looked super hard to find. And all of a sudden, tons of copies dropped online. And I saw that book going for $10, $12 because there were no first appearances in it, right? So people had a chance to read it. And then they released them and said, let me hurry up and cash out on this book. So there's a lot of things you have to be watching for constantly. Like I said, number one for me, I read my books and I'm a speed reader. So on a Tuesday, I'm reading. I love it because now Tuesday I can read all my DC books online, make no money on their spec, and then get ready for the Monday books where I'll have to catch it at some point. But no, like the Gold Lantern stuff. We saw Gold Lantern coming. You saw that was going to come. And DC is now, and I brought up, they're getting so smart. The first character I think that I remember this happening for was Crush, right? When we saw Crush and they started to do the second print single character, that's the first character I remember being they're starting to get smart now. And then we saw it happen again with Punchline, and then we've seen it happen with a lot of different characters online. The Gold Lantern, who I just brought up, I think the only one they didn't do that for was Naomi. That's who they should have done it for. She would have been great on a solo cover, right? That.
I feel like that Naomi stuff just died.
Yeah, and you know what? It's because people aren't into Bendis's take on DC, and I've been reading it, and you know what? I actually like some of the stuff he's been doing with the Invisible Mafia and the Leviathan and Red Cloud. I thought was a really interesting villain who's now, it seems, is going to be a hero over there. But Young Justice, he's thrown so many characters in. He's juggling now. Legion is going to be his baby. It's very tough to figure that out because I'm sitting on Impulse spec from, why isn't that kid a huge character in the DCU? I mean, they just had him featured in the last issue, but and I'm always going to get off track, Ryan. The other thing I want to talk about was really quick, like I got this, right? This game, all right.
Beautiful cover.
This was a Greg Horn, as soon as you saw the free comic book day got delayed, yeah.
I'm the only one that doesn't have one.
Yeah. Well, as soon as you saw a delay on that book, you said right away, okay, this is going to end up being that first virus. And I've read 26 already, right? All right, 26 is not out yet. Am I right on that? Because sometimes I read things and so 26 isn't out. So that's where we're going to get a healthy dose of this. We're going to get a healthy dose of a certain other symbiote is going to come into play, and you're going to see another book blow up really soon, and that's that Ultimate Comics, the Ultimate Venom, right? Because we know, I think it's such a paradigm going on between the Maker and Miles Morales. Those characters are sort of inextricably linked if you look at them, right? Because the Maker's first appearance is the same as Miles Morales, even though he's really appeared first in Ultimate Fantastic Four 1, which is a whole nother thing. You get both their stories. There's a book called Survive, and Survive is a book that comes out from the Ultimate Universe. It was a one-shot. It came out after the death of Peter Parker and before the new Ultimates, the all-new Ultimates, where Miles Morales is in. And it's at that point where you see Reed Richards is truly becoming that Maker character, and Miles Morales just starts this up. So their characters keep jumping back and forth. You're going to see them tie in closer and closer together. The Maker, I think, is one of the most underrated villains right now because he's in multiple books. He's Al Ewing loves him, Hickman loves him, and Cates loves him. You have three of the big writers at Marvel love him. When you have everybody loving a particular character, to me, that says bye, 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 right? I mean, that's where you want to be with that. Even on villain spec, which I'm always suspect on anyway. But they're giving him, read 26. I don't want to do. I don't like to play the spoiler game.
Also, isn't there there's a free comic book day book coming out that has that virus stuff? So if they're putting him in a free comic book day book, they got plans for him. It sounds.
Yeah, and the thing that's going to kill that spec, and that's why I would say maybe sell on that. If you as soon as 26 comes out, I'm going to be looking to see how that book is sort of, because if that character then turns out being, which it most likely will be, a character that's existing already, like I heard Larry from Larry's Comics was Larry, yeah, probably Larry, was thinking that it was going to be someone from this group that had been hunting Venom. They had like armored suits, so he's like, oh, it looks like it'd be a cobbled together armored suit. So if he ends up being another character, we get in one of those situations again where first appearances, right? And that drives me crazy. I
think it drives everybody crazy. That's part of this game.
Oh yeah, and again, it's Brian. I think that's because the rules change from book to book. Like I bring up Miles Morales,
and from year to year.
Oh yeah, well, I brought up like Starling, right? Like Starling's like a very minor character, but Saladin Ahmed created her. She's like a nice foil for Miles Morales. She appears at the end of issue 5. She comes down with the wings on the last panel and says, I'm Starling and blah, blah, blah. And the next issue, she's on the cover. Now people have said that 6 is her first full appearance. Okay, that's fine for me. But now I just went back and I grabbed some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I found some 52s at a comic shop. And I've been reading 51 and reading 52 over and over again. And I'm sorry. And I know there's another guy out there who believes strongly in this, that 52 is really her first full. You see her in 51. You see her on a last panel saying, all right, let's go hunt down whoever. She's wearing her thing. You see her in a couple panels throughout, but she's unmasked, she's named, and she's in full action throughout 52. I think 52 is a really undervalued book in terms of Jennica, especially now that we see Sophie Campbell's going to be doing like so much down the line. You can guarantee that you're going to see an animated line coming with all these characters coming in with that reboot. I know I heard, I think Mel was talking about that last night. I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but I know they were talking about where are they going with that. That is a very friendly sort of environment you're opening up. And now more than ever with really getting to a female turtle is essential for them right now to remain. It's going to piss off, some of the original turtle people, which it always does, but it's driving new people onto that book, which is what they want to do. They can't keep having people our age or, not, you're younger than me, Brian, and probably you too, Mr. Longshore.
No.
But anyway, I'll go off on segues all night. So
no. You hit a couple of big things there. I mean, listen, and I was just talking about this before with Nico. I mean, first appearances, the book that gets gravitated, it's not so much the first appearances. Is okay. Are they on the cover? Are they relevant to the story? Right, and it is a moving target. There'll be a book where they appear in the last panel and they're on the cover. That is without question the first appearance. it's definitely a moving target. That's why I was talking about, Black Widow #1. What do you want to call Yelena Belova's first appearance? Definitionally, her first appearance is in Inhumans #5. That's where she first shows up. It's definitely a tease. She's got a couple of panels. She's kind of in the shadows. You get to make her out a little bit, but her unveiling, sort of her splash to the world, is in Black Widow #1. For me, I think Black Widow #1 with her variant cover is the spec play there. But
and even these, like which I found in like short box spins today, like the Pamela cover. I mean, these are like. And then like the bondage fans out there,
Yeah.
But to me that's just like these are cheap books and people are chasing that Inhumans book. I saw that Inhumans book right after the Yelena Belova announcement, and I know you spoke a little bit. Florence Pugh is she's getting a big I notice a big audience for her because she's doing like lower budget, like that horror thing she did, and then she's doing like bigger things, like smaller parts and bigger things. She's gonna be one of those characters that Marvel could stick her around for a while and throw her in something bigger, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of her stuff, but I did see her in that one movie, and she was really captivating. I think they got a good talent there, and I think they'd be around for a while. So
what about that? And I know Mel doesn't like me talking about this book so quick, and Lucas don't. Shout out to Mel at Drunken Chat, Lucas Fashina, doing some great stuff over there. I know Lucas and Mel don't like me talking about this much, but what about that Marvel preview book that came with the Wizard that has the Yelena? It's a separate comic that came in a Wizard, and it came out before most of that stuff, if I remember correctly. I'm not 100% sure, but that's a separate comic. I know it's a freebie. I know a lot of people don't like talking about freebies, especially free comic book day books, but is that something that people should be looking for?
Yeah, I think it's a really cool one as well. My guess is that it won't captivate most of the collector audience, but I think it's definitely a cool have. I don't see it eclipsing Inhumans or Black Widow 1, but if you like the character, I would be out there grabbing it. There's also a Dynamic Forces cover as well. For that one, I don't like it as much, but it's another one that I think is getting a lot of attention and probably the rarest of the bunch is my guess. I don't know for sure how many they were produced of that, but that's another one out there that people seem to be paying up for in a big way in high grade.
You talked earlier about Wraith, and I love talking the Wraith spec because I love Cosmic Marvel, and I really love that whole series that came out. What's it called? I'm spacing on the name. The Wraith series that was Annihilation. Yeah. I love that whole series. I love the Silver Surfer, the four part series for that. I love the Super Skrull one. But I really love the whole storyline. Do we see that coming to the MCU as like a way to introduce the cosmic universe?
I think it's possible, and I think it's funny that particular book. It's been sort of like my white whale, right? It's been like because when I was reading that book and the stuff with the Exelon, and I've been tracking back from Nova 8. So Nova 8 was, they had the great Adi Granov covers on them, but Nova 8 was known really for the introduction of Cosmo, the space dog. And in that issue, you see this group, the Luminos, they actually got the name wrong. They meant to use one group, and the writer screwed up, and they used the wrong group. So they brought someone back into the book, which is a backstory, but they're trying to contain this thing called the Abyss, right? So there's the Abyss that they have. It's sort of this thing that takes over. It takes your body over. So that's Nova 8. It ends, and then years later, we see Secret Avengers. There was a Secret Avengers run, and that Secret Avengers run dealt again with this Serpent Crown, right? Like the triple Serpent Crown being put back together, and everyone who had the Serpent Crown was tapped into this. They kept calling it the Abyss, the Void, Into the Null. They had spirals in the sky. I've done like big posts on this, and like they're gonna put me away with the Zapruder tape people for this, but there's so much, and their eyes turn black, and they're sort of taken over, and they talk about what's coming and what they're trying to release, and we've seen two tales of the Serpent Crown come up again recently, and this Serpent Crown has a long storied history back with the Marvel universe and back with Namor and back in the day. And now with Conan there's a story going on right now, but I tracked that all the way through, and in that series, they talk about there's a guy, Aloysius Thorndyke, who has a signet ring, and that signet ring is something that Wraith builds up, that his father has him hunting after someone with a signet ring in that Wraith series. And I don't know if that ended up being a red herring, because it turns out if you read that series, the parents really screwed him over the whole time, and they just wanted him to do something else, not get revenge. But he's a fascinating character, because he's a part of this Nameless, this Exelon that's going to come into play in this your King of Black. You're going to see so much untied in this Wraith series. That's a key book. If people aren't on that already, and if there are copies available, who knows what the world's going to be like by the time it's released. You want to be looking out for that book. And like I said, I think the EM Gist is the 1 to 50 on that one, and it's him on the motorcycle as well. But what a fascinating character, right? And Donny Cates was saying way back when, and one more Donny Cates tidbit is, I said all these Web of Venom series with all these different characters from Dylan, right? Is that his name? Dylan? Is that the kid's name? Dylan Brock.
Hey guys, listen. I've actually got to hop right now, guys. Gary, Brian, thank you guys so much. It was a blast.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to go, but listen, keep going. I'll tune in and catch the tail end of this. But thank you, guys.
Chased off a show. No. Absolutely.
Later, guys.
Bye-bye. Later. But what he said was they're going to have like this maybe, I said it would be great if they were all coming together in one sort of team book. And he said, a good day is coming for you soon. So maybe those characters that he's been using, because they've basically been Andy Benton, Dylan Brock, now Wraith, maybe there's going to be some sort of group coming together because we haven't had really a super spider group, right? Spider Girls and a Spider Woman, which are, is a whole nother spec as well.
Well, let's talk about that real quick. What's going on with that? Because that got so hot so quick. The whole Spider Woman's talk and the rumors and this and that, and it just fell. It seemed like it fell off. I was really looking forward to. I know they were talking about an animated series maybe or something in the rumor mill. What's going on with that? Have we heard anything?
I think a lot of it has to do with what's going on with Sony, right? In terms of doing a Madam Web series, in terms of saying the Silver and Black one's still not dead. So they have a lot of female-centric things going on in the Spider universe. And I know that Madam Web spec is interesting, right? Could be Julia Carpenter, who we see actually, I think a couple months down in Spider-Man, they're putting together actually some group, a group of Web or one of these crazy things, put them all together. And I think she's going to be the Madam Web character. So I could see them using the older version and having her die, and then Julia Carpenter being the legacy version, right? But in terms of that Spider-Girl spec, I blame Mel for that, single-handedly getting that book so hyped up. I got a copy of that back in the day, sold it off. And actually, I think it's like a Spider-Gwen book, like a Spider-Gwen 8 or 7 variant is the first time they actually team up together. It's actually not that the Spider-Girls book. There's this Spider-Gwen variant on that where they're like, are we going to team up? And that's the first official, just like the Birds of Prey controversy back in the day, which really, who cares about? It's sort of like, who cares about Immortal She-Hulk? Who cares about some of the characters that people are so quick to chase? If you notice, guys, comics are back in a big way. Yes. We don't have to pick at the scraps anymore. We can look at, like I said, it was so great to see Miles Morales, I think, open the floodgates for like normalcy in comics again, right? Like all of a sudden we started to see that. And I still think people may be chasing the wrong Miles Morales completely on that, because don't forget, it was the game that got people so hyped up and excited.
Yes.
And the Spider-Verse Miles Morales, right? Comes from...
Leave it up there, yeah.
So for those who don't know, the Spider-Verse Miles Morales of this world, when the PlayStation Spider-Man is recruited to Spider-Geddon, he pops in his dimension. This Spider-Man is talking to Miles Morales, a Miles Morales who already has powers. We don't see him in full costume, but there was a cover with Ashley Barton, and there he is on the cover again. There's a 1 to 50 Tedesco cover.
I love that cover.
And then you don't see this character again, and then you see this character chronologically pop up in Spider-Man City at War, and this was, I think, the 1 to 100, the Adi Granoff cover for City at War. So this is where we see Miles again with his dad. Issue 2, Nakayama then did the covers. These are sort of the these were the higher ratio print runs. By the time it got to the end, it was 1 to 50, then 1 to 25. But this is where his dad dies actually in this story. And then in issue 5, it's just like the 8-bit cover. And issue 5 is where he actually, his new origin, because he gets bitten by the spider that Mary Jane knocks over. He gets bitten. And then in issue 6, again, Nakayama cover, issue 6 is where he's upside down and meets Peter Parker, and they both find out that they both have spider powers. So this happens chronologically first, but this is actually first appearance, and he has powers in Spider-Geddon, because we hear him say, "Oh, does he have powers too?" And he's like, "Well, he's not ready yet." So that Spider-Geddon Zero book, that's Miles Morales, and I keep thinking that Sony's going to develop their own Spider Universe, right? With
out of that game,
that Spider-Man is a different, like.
I love that Spider-Man.
That's a great suit. Even the Velocity suit was nicely designed. Like they're having fun with that. They're giving him the skins. Watch them develop their own little
Mr. Negative, right?
Yeah, that huge villain potential, right? That Mr. Negative is a great Avengers 7 variant with Mr. Negative holding him, which is the first PlayStation Spidey appearance, because that cover predated that Spider-Geddon Zero by 1 week. And then there's actually a Panini book by Chiquetto, which was used as a variant later for City at War, where he's swinging through. But that's a Panini book of Spider-Man that reprints 3 of them. But that cover, first appearance in the Panini cover, which I know you like good foreign, especially the stuff, good Italian stuff, right?
Yeah, I do. I love it. And I'm glad you brought that up. We're not going to get too much into it. What I will say is the foreign stuff isn't just reserved for old classic, keys. Some of the most beautiful covers that you'll see are coming from new foreign books that are being put out, like you're talking about. So make sure you guys check those out. I want to get back into Turtles real quick, because we were talking about the female character. Now there's a female character coming up in soon issues that seems like she's kind of an amalgamation of all the Turtles, and almost like a child type thing, and that could be a huge character. Do you know much about that?
I know that she's on that 1 to 10 cover. Is she on that? I know there's a cover that shows a small turtle in the sewer and something lurking behind her. And I was like, oh, that piqued my interest. I have to be honest. I'm a big reader. I read all Marvel DC. I collect a lot of other things. Like I just found a bunch of, in fact, I found a bunch of those Ninja Turtle variants from like the 50s to the 70s today, including those second print sketch variants, which are really nice.
Beautiful, yeah.
But I don't know enough. But I do follow the writer, and I will tell you, she's, even when you look in the bar scenes, they're all characters dropped in there. Like she's really doing a lot of designing and dropping characters and backgrounds and making it really kind of fun to collect that sort of book again. Though I'm not sure if it's skewing younger for some people, and I think that might be the issue that some of the diehard Turtle fans are having, and that's why they're going to grab The Last Ronin, right?
Yes, I was just going to say that.
That's Black Label Turtles, isn't it?
Yes. Well, and they're moving on a good trajectory where they're leaving the other stuff for the younger crowd, and then they're giving us something the older crowd wants. The older crowd desperately wants Eastman and Laird to get back together and write something, and they're doing something cool with the whole Ronin thing. And we could see both of those, different timelines or whatever in the big screen. I mean, I know people are just going crazy about this Ronin stuff. They want to see it on the big screen, whether it's TV, whatever. And then, of course, we have the new news of the animation coming, which could be for the younger crowd.
Yeah, there's like I said, it's a good time to be collecting. There's so many, some news every day. Like we saw the Red Grifter coming over in Batman, right? That's a thing going on. So now do you collect? Like there's literally millions of the Wildcats, right? Issue 1, but that new Wildstorm Wildcats that came out, where Warren Ellis, so I don't know if I could say his name and I might get canceled, where Warren Ellis and Hunt, I think, was illustrating that, where they sort of revamped those characters and created a new spin on them. So maybe we see those characters introduced, and he actually isn't even in the first issue. He doesn't appear until issue 2 of the new Wildcat series, where he's on the cover, and then he's in the traditional Grifter mask in 3. So what do you chase? Original versions? Like, again, that Miles Morales dilemma, like first appearance. And that's what makes, I think, the speculation investing game such, because we can have, otherwise who'd want to come on and hear the two of us talk about comics forever, unless you're like unearthing things or finding things out that, that, okay, maybe this could come down. And I even played around with Immortal She-Hulk. I played around with some other things and said, what are things? To me, I'd rather sell those books and buy bronze keys, right? Like that's what I want.
I think that's one of the best things about the spec game is that a lot of us that are playing this game and flipping books, we're flipping it to achieve to gain something that we want in our PC, and I'm all for that. And it's the spec game and all of comics, you mentioned it, is so exciting right now. We haven't had series like Thor and everything Donny Cates is doing, and the Metal series with Snyder, and there's a couple other series in DC that are really good, really well written. It's exciting to read. I can't remember the last time there were multiple books that I felt this way about.
1,000%, Brian. And a book I've been tooting the horn of constantly from DC, and it reminds me a lot. If it was from Marvel, maybe it'd be getting more hype, and like Strange Academy with those 11 first appearances. But Tom Taylor's Suicide Squad has been phenomenal. And like I said, I don't know if the sales are a little troublesome because they went ahead and made the unprecedented announcement that they would kill off Deadshot, right? Like 3 issues before it came out. So it makes me wonder about, but critically, anyone who's been reading that book, he introduced new characters in. He ingrained a couple of the older characters in. He had a great solo Captain Boomerang issue, which was classic. Like, to me, Tom Taylor is DC's version of not Donny Cates, but more like an Al Ewing type. And I think because he has such a great handle and feel, and he also does that alternate universe stuff, right? Like Injustice, the Deceased books, which have been great. I've only been reading online, but he's blown me away with what he's doing there. And I'll tell you one thing: the best character to come out of that one, the Dinah Lance Green Lantern. Like that's it. But the problem is there are way too many Green Lanterns, and I love the Far Sector one, and we got the Teen Lantern, and then Jessica Cruz coming back on the radar again. Too many Green Lanterns, and that's why Green Lantern spec will never be like. I just pulled out the 48, 49, 50, 51, right? Because Kyle Rayner's name's popping up again, right?
Well, I'm partial to Green Lantern. It's one of my all-time favorite characters, and I'm a big Hal Jordan fan. I like Kyle. I really like Kyle, but I got to see. I really hope that they bring a Hal Jordan version, to this HBO Max thing or whatever they're supposing to do as a main character. But the only thing I can see Green Lantern, if it gets hot again in the spec game, super hot, is if they do a Green Lantern Corps well on HBO Max or whatever. Talk about unreal.
I could see them doing a great version, and it reminds me of they just made the Gotham Central announcement, but almost like they did almost like Top 10. You remember I don't know if you remember Top 10 back in the day. Green Lantern Corps done that way, where they're they're in and out of sort of like working with the Guardians on cases, like intergalactic cases. That way you have sort of a built-in, they interact, but then you can have, you can free it up a little and have
different storylines.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think the most interesting Green Lantern is really not even a Green Lantern right now. I think Jade, because that Stargirl series has been really on point, and I'm an episode or 2 behind, but I love how they're introducing the legacy characters in. I just pulled out those Alex Ross covers again.
My favorite.
Wonderful. Like people forget, he did not only did he do that JSA run, he did the Justice Society run too at the later issues on those books. So those Alex Ross black covers. Like, to put a full 9.8 set of that together, that's my sort of what I've been working on for a long time.
Yeah. My favorite one of those covers is the Starman one, the Starman from the Kingdom Come universe. I love that character. I love that character when he was in the JSA, Jeff Johns run, all that stuff. For those of you guys that don't know about that JSA run, the Jeff Johns run on JSA with the Alex Ross covers, do yourself a favor and go read those. Great stuff. Jeff Johns has such a love affair with certain characters, including those JSA characters, that he writes them so well. And I agree with you, Gary. I am super, super stoked that they're bringing those characters to a bigger audience, because there's so many of them that are so good, including Jade. The Stargirl character is a great character. A lot of those old school legacy characters are big. So,
and that's I think All-Star Squadron 25 is where you have eight characters introduced, or six to eight, because I remember it's Jade and Obsidian are introduced. And you know what? If they're going to bring Obsidian along too, and like I said, filling out those slots. We just had Brainwave Jr. Like they're going deep. And I talked for that Infinity Incorporated a while. I'm like, that Infinity Incorporated is an interesting book. They're bringing these and because it's Jeff Johns, and this is his baby. This is his passion project. Courtney's named after his daughter who passed away. I mean, this is not going to, unless they pull that from his hands. And like I said, I forget who's the other guy who's Berlanti. Is he working on that with him? Maybe
it might be Berlanti. Yeah.
But that's been a really enjoyable book show. I've even got my 11-year-old daughter into it, so it's a kind of show that really has that appeal that she wasn't as into like some of the other shows. Like I think Green Arrow was a little dark for her. Arrow, yeah.
And also, they just announced that's no longer on. My brother's over there shredding documents. What was I saying there?
Just talking about those characters. By no longer being on that channel or something.
Oh yeah, DC Universe. Yeah, so they moved that. They moved that officially over to CW, right?
Because there's no more DCU being made shows, right? Which who knows what's going on there? That's a whole other. There's a craziness about it. Too many streamings. That's the problem. Now I cut the cord and now I have 7 streaming. So
same way. Let me ask you something real quick. I'm a big fan of collecting like creator firsts, whether that be first professional appearances or first covers or first time a creator has written or drawn a major character they're associated with. Do you see that ever being something that people can spec on legitimately? I know there's been things like the first Scott Snyder Batman, stuff like that. They never really take off though.
So I think that's all about Bryan, and I think you guys have probably talked a lot about this on the flip side a lot, is the more you sort of concentrically circle your sort of collecting and bring them together and sort of have that Venn diagram where they all connect across the board. So that's why you always, like Transformers, you're always going to get the fans of the toy, fans of the cartoon, fans of the comic, fans of the movie. So all of a sudden you have 4 circles flipping together. The more you narrow down what you're looking at, like if you're just looking at creators or particular, like if you say this creator on this character, now you're looking for fans of, let's just say Capullo on this, right? So now you're narrowing your circles down a little more. So there are collectors, and the rarer the item, the more they're going to want to pay for it, right? Like Disney collectors went crazy back for that when that Disney book was released, and that was something, Nick was offering away shares of that at like penny shares of that. I should have gotten in on that. I was on that show, but I brought that up. In fact, I think I had shown the pic, and I'm an idiot because I had shown that picture back on my on MeWe. Remember MeWe? That's like the Betamax of social media. I put that up there, but you have fans of, like, you're talking about someone who owns Captain Dingleberry 1. That's Rick Remender's first writing, right? Like, he wrote about superheroes based around like fecal matter. Like that's this guy's first writing bit. So I love that kind of stuff. I love collecting old art. I do a lot of collected artwork. I collect certain people over and over again. Like I was a big proponent of Miguel Mercado back in the day. Now he's doing Marvel. He's getting on Marvel covers all the time. Raza, right? Who or is that the Wu-Tang guy or the artist?
Yeah.
I'm in Staten Island, so I
wish it was the Wu-Tang guy.
I always have to give the Shaolin a shout out from the borough where they.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But I tend to follow, like there's a guy I've been following forever. I don't think I'll find his cover in a second, but his name is Leo Colapietro. And he's a guy who was he was Xenoscope's off-brand guy. And I even said, what are you doing at Xenoscope? And he said, that's the reason I'm here, to give them an alternative to, why everyone else buys Xenoscope, for the pervy covers. But he did one with Donnie Darko recently that came out. He got a lot of attention for, I think it was on the Illuminati series, but some of his stuff that he's been doing, I've shown his Ghost Rider, is phenomenal. But he does this digital process. So I'm always looking at, I collect those artists now. Like you want to get Peach Momoko back when she was still like when Dai was out. You remember when Dai, and she did that Dai cover that no one wants, and like that's the only Momoko cover no one wants. But she was about to do that cover where they're sitting under the umbrella, and she's like talking to someone at a cafe or something. And I had written up on that, and I said, and at that point I was saying, is the Peach Momoko train ending? And meanwhile, it was only just starting. Who knew? Like I sold that Strange Academy. I bought the entire set with the Virgin Momoko variant, and it came. I sold that one, and then I'm holding on to the 1 to 50, 1 to 25, 1 to 10. At the regular cover, that was going for like $30 today of Strange Academy 1. I think. I think that book's starting to heat up significantly.
I like the whole devil's advocate position that you take, and I like to take it too, just for conversation. I want to talk about, the reason I'm talking about this is the whole Peach Momoko thing. At some point, all these artists get super hot, and they put out a ton of stuff. And what ends up happening, not on everyone, but the large majority, is we kind of get burnt out. We get overkill. And then, their books start dropping or something crazy happens. But do you see overkill happening on Peach Momoko?
I see overkill happening for collectors, but not for collectors of Peach Momoko. And what I mean by that is when you have an artist who all of a sudden, like J. Scott Campbell, that guy is making money hands over fist because he took possession of most of his own covers. He's selling slabs of stuff. And that stuff isn't necessarily having a huge resale value unless it's some of his rare, unless he's putting out some rare stuff. But you can buy 9.8 slabs off of him, autograph stuff. Same thing with sort of Art Germ, right? Art Germ was always selling from his own store out there. And Peach Momoko, if she's going to go that route and probably have her own store, I mean, she signed that exclusive deal with Boom Comics, right? To me, I saw that Wind 3 cover, and that's the one where I said, now maybe it's finally over because she's a quick worker, and her style, she can do things very quickly, right? Like, so I don't think she's going to have that burnout, fatigue, or quality sort of drop off necessarily, but I think it's going to get so samey. Is that a word?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's how I started to feel when I was getting hit over the head with all the store variants of the painted covers on stuff, and I was from Delato to Granov to looking at all these guys, to Ryan Brown, who was like coming up and doing a lot of these covers. And now you're seeing, I really shouldn't say this because I know CBSI has an exclusive variant coming up for the Secret Seven or Tom Taylor's book. But
I think that's Simple Man's.
Oh, sorry, I don't want to cross brand.
No, it's okay. Hey, this is. I said this the other night. Listen, guys, we're in a community here. There's a large play box here, and we're so much stronger together. So, yeah, we don't have to worry about that stuff.
I'm a rogue agent who just sort of is out on my own, just sort of navigating the waters because no one can figure out what the hell I'm doing. But
hold on real quick. I will say you might think that, but I'm like a lot of people also fans of the comic perspective, and what especially you, Nico, is just there along for the ride. I love what you're doing. I really hope that you guys continue to do it. It's a fun watch, and especially a fun watch for those early morning people. So continue keeping it up.
I appreciate that. And we just said, we looked at each other and said, you know what, we're up in the morning. I have kids and I love that time in the morning. Like I read my Times, and now I talk to Nico. So we're like the Kathy Lee and
yeah. JJ Maxwell brings up another person, the Shannon Mayer thing. And yeah.
But that's what it is. And I think even Mel brought up on some show, Sia right?
Yes.
Like these creators, once they fold in the tent and take the tent, and they pack their tent up, I think then you see collectors their group of collectors will follow them over to there and keep buying those books religiously, but you're not going to see those same sales on eBay, and you're not going to see that same secondary market value that's going on, even though, it's more the people who are the completest of those sort of covers, which are out there. Like I love Richard Isanov. Like, he does not do a lot of covers, but he's gotten a lot of attention for that, obviously for this, right? For the, like that's the cover that people have been, on. But this guy is an amazing artist. He's mostly known for his inking. I have read Sonya's stuff. He doesn't do a lot of covers, but there are certain people, and I tend to, like I said, I love what Mike Morello does, right? Like, Mike Morello finds covers, and that was one of the reasons, like, I used to be on CBSI, and I'm like, oh, I guess I could never do anything for them again, because that's what I would have wanted to do, is like I'm a cover whore. Like, I have long boxes of books I won't sell, and these, I'm like these are my greatest of all time. Like
I'm the same way.
You're a Green Lantern fan, that the Arisa, the cover with her, like all green cover.
Oh yes.
Like a Ben Oliver variant.
Yeah, I love him.
But yeah, it's sort of like going back to your original question, I collect certain artists. I collect certain character runs. I have an Uncanny run that was my first book I ever bought off the stand. I remember going to the stand and buying Uncanny X-Men 179 Kitty Pryde. That's why I fell in love with Kitty Pryde as I guess I would have been like a 11, 12-year-old back then. And I went back and got all the issues back to like 103. That's where I am now, right? And I have the collection even when they ended it, it was like, and then I collected again. That's something I'll never sell. That stays for me, and that stays in my box because that has a certain sort of like,
nostalgia.
Yeah, it's got the feels going, right?
Yeah.
But other thing, and I think that's a problem with modern speculators. You end up with something sort of like, you look at this, right? Like this is going on over here. And then I have a basement with another 30 long boxes that have moved with me since I was 12 years old. And these boxes have disappeared over years. Like I've had like my entire Ultimate Spider-Man run disappear, but that's what I think. I think that's the thing you can't do. Don't fall in love with your books. And there's no book that, like I said, unless it's a character that you said, I'm going after every character. I'm going after this run. And I love that. I love seeing someone go after a run of such an obscure book. And I'm like, good on you, man. Like that's your thing. But when you're buying other books, sell those books and don't sit around and wait for that. You know, there are people who wait for the roller coaster and the ride's over, right? You're waiting for that next hill to come. It's done. It's done, buddy. Now you got to put that away for 5-6 years, right? I bring up like Vault Comics, Vagrant Queen, a book that no one was thinking about. Like I collect all Vault Comics. They're a great publisher, some great covers, great horror sci-fi imprints. But that was a book, 2 covers. As soon as I heard that announced, I sold it, never looked back on it, and got like $30 for books that would now be sitting like dollar bin books again. And that's what you have to do. You have to say, what's your line, first of all, to get out of bed to print out a label? Like, is it worth it for you and doing the packing? Because if it's not, don't get involved in it, right? Now I'm at the point with my eBay store, I don't put anything under like $30 covers on there. I can't sell $10, $5. I'm not that kind of person. I have a full-time, remote learning job.
Yes, yeah. I hear you.
Depending on what New York City does in the fall. And I have 2 kids at home, and I have a wife who we're all in the DOE. So we have to be involved with that. So this is not, for me, this pays for vacations. I'm going away tomorrow because I was able to sell a Venom 3 and a Strange Academy. And I'm never going to look back and be like, damn it, someone got $800 slabbing that, and I only got $300 for it. Because you know what? I paid $79.99 for the whole set.
Yes.
Right.
And like you mentioned, a lot of people will wait till it gets to this level and then not sell and drop. And it's because they're so worried that they're worried it's going to get to this level and then it's going to go this. But the majority of the books that do this compared to the majority of the books that do this is astronomical. So you got to, like you said, your wins and losses will outweigh yourself.
Yeah, and that's why be careful with independent books, because independent books have a limited shelf life, and the problem with that is characters will come back again and again in the big 2 companies, and even maybe even Image to an extent, and now Invincible. Keep the fingers crossed. Yes. But they'll come back again and again, so that spec is always going to be cyclical. But once they do like a show of something that just sort of bombed out and no one was interested in, you're stuck with that. Unless there's a collector of that particular property, and that's what happens to everybody. Not everything can be the next Miles Morales or the next I'm trying to think of a Null,
Ahsoka,
right?
Or
that all of those books, and even like I said, Image now has this crossover thing coming up. They want to drum up this interest, and like, oh, what's that about, the 3 dots? And I saw Nick from Key Collector say maybe it's Marvel, DC, and Image. That would be great. And we've seen the Marvel DC teasers for a while, but what does that tell me? That tells me buy up all those Justice League Avengers books, buy up all those Marvel DC books, buy those amalgam books, buy things that buy those crossover books now, just in case things like that happen. And you get those books cheap, and don't overpay, and don't get caught up as I'm not the only one to tell you don't get caught up in FOMO, but I constantly say that find other sources. Don't go right to eBay. If I tell you the slabs I bought, I got a 9.8 Old Guard slab a week before it came out for $69. I mean, wow. It was a regular copy. I found Descender the day it came out because someone still had it up from a store, and not all those stores are linked to eBay. So you got to search around a little, and you have to know, search around with different terms and different things, and find your little, local places to go to too.
Yeah. This was a great episode tonight, guys. We actually kind of had 2 interviews in one, and I'm really happy you came on, Gary. I love hearing you talk about this stuff. And make sure you guys go check out the Comic Perspective. Make sure you guys check out Mr. Longshort's articles on GoCollect. And like and subscribe. Hang out with us in the future. Hopefully we can maybe figure out a way to get these guys on more and give you some knowledge. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate it.
All right. We're gonna play this out, and we'll see you guys next time. Adios.